it's sunny down in Mexico. The sun gets high when I get low. The only way to get there is to let yourself go. Good times are made in Mexico.
Thank you so much for joining us, and wanted to kind of start off chatting with you about your experience with BAI and Moxché and whatnot. Before we get into that, give us a backstory. How did you guys meet? How did you decide on a destination wedding, and why a destination wedding?
Yeah, so my husband now, that's very weird to say, we actually went to high school together, so we've known each other since we were 14, but we didn't date, so people always joke like, oh, you're high school sweethearts, and really we weren't, and that's okay. So we met when we were in high school, and then we're just friends the whole time. Our mutual friends were all hanging out together. We have pictures of us hanging out in high school together, but we kind of went separate ways when we went to college, and then I had gone off to medical school out of the country, and we just kind of, Snapchat here and there. When we come home, our friends would hang out. And then when I had come home for good from the island to do the rest of my medical training here, he was like, oh, let's go bowling. And I was like, sure, no problem. This will sound like fun. We like to bowl. We're kind of nerds. And we were going bowling like every Friday night. And I remember my dad being like, Gabriella, this poor guy has like a really big crush on you. And I'm like, no, Dad, we're just friends. And he's like, you're not just friends. So next thing you know, he was like, oh, maybe let's like give this a shot. It'll be 6 years next month that we've been together, and now we're over almost a month married. He knew what he was doing with the bowling.
Right. Now, did he ever fess up, though? Was there a crush in high school?
So it was actually in my vows that we both actually had a crush on each other in high school, but he was like really bad with a cell phone, so I never thought that he was interested. We would only ever see each other when our mutual friends were hanging out. So we did both fess up years later that we had a crush in high school. It just like didn't work out then. And then, life just brought us back together.
Awesome. So why a destination wedding? Was that something you always envisioned? Was that something you guys together came to the conclusion on?
He was definitely not for a destination at first. I did have to do a little bit of convincing, but it really didn't take that long to convince him. I had always known that I wanted something small. One, cost effective. I knew that weddings in the United States are way too expensive for just something that I didn't think was feasible. But really that I wanted something small and intimate. And I love to travel. I get like very limited time off being a physician. So when we do get the time off, we're going away. And I was like, well, why can't we just combine both worlds? And, for him initially he's like, well, he's so used to seeing all of his friends and everybody having these like weddings here. And I was like, but look what we could get if we go somewhere else. So before we had actually met with you the first time, I had sat down with him being like, listen, 1, look at the cost, and 2, look at where we could go. And it didn't really take that long for me to convince him to do destination. So that's when, we kind of sat down and really delve into, where were we going to go? What are the next steps, etc.
When you came to BAI, we had our first conversation. Where were you in the process then?
I was nowhere. I was lost in the abyss, I felt like. We had a friend who had a destination wedding. We weren't able to make it, but they had always said such amazing things about a destination wedding. And they had like a travel agent. And we talked, and they were saying like, that's really what you should look into. And I remember, you could thank Instagram, because I know that they're always listening. And I guess they were listening to John and I talk about destination weddings and where we should go and what we should do, and looking into just like resorts in Mexico. And then your guys' page popped up. And I was like, okay, so I'm now stalking every video that you guys have posted, all the things that you're doing. And I'm like, okay, this looks like we should start. So when we had first met with you, we had no knowledge about anything about how do we get started on a destination wedding, what are the steps of doing a destination wedding, and it was eye-opening because you guys really laid the framework to allow us to continue, which was nice. But before I had a conversation with you, I knew a date that I wanted to get married and who I wanted to get married to. That was it.
So you hadn't even really started researching resorts or anything?
A few, but realistically I was like, well, I don't know, they all look nice. And when you Google like resorts in Mexico, you're gonna get like 1,000. There's so many resorts, so it's overwhelming. When you're initially starting looking through. We had eyeballed maybe a couple that we said, oh, those look really nice, but not really diving deep into like how the resort setups are, what are the steps or the process.
Everything looks good in a photo, like
Exactly.
beachy and like, in paradise.
Exactly. They can make it look however they want to make it look, which was where I thought like you guys were really helpful because I don't know any difference, and we knew that we weren't going to be able to go down to visit any of these places before. So we were really taking the photos and your guys' expertise of saying, where do we think that we could, see ourselves getting married and having this like week-long party with our friends, because we were taking the trust of everybody else. And I think just doing that alone would have been impossible, because you wouldn't have had that kind of input and feedback when you're looking at different resorts, taking what do we want out of our wedding and where can we see ourselves going with that.
Well, and so fill me in a little bit, because obviously, I know how everything went, but for those that are watching, when you came to our first meeting and you had done some research, but how did we help you narrow down to find the right property for you?
So you had asked us what was important to us. And for me was I wanted a place that our family and friends could enjoy, right? A good atmosphere. We're foodies. I didn't want to go to a place and you hear horror stories of people going to all-inclusive resorts and the food just being like kind of subpar. And I was just thinking, like, if our friends are going to pay money to go see us get married, I want them to also enjoy this experience. This is not just about our wedding. This is the only time in our lives that we're ever going to be able to get to vacation with our friends like this, and we want to be able to enjoy it. So it was important for us to have a good wedding location, but also have a good resort. Because you don't want just one or the other. So we had really talked about, where do I see myself getting married, which I wanted a beach location. I wanted my feet in the sand, which I got, which was nice. I didn't want the reception on the beach. So it was kind of talking about that, but then other aspects into the resort as well. And, cost, those are important. You don't know how much these things are going to cost in terms of a wedding, but how are they going to cost for your guests or for us to go stay as well.
Yeah. And so we narrowed down. Did you consider multiple properties?
Yeah, so we had initially looked at, because we have nieces and nephews, we had initially looked at, more family friendly. And when we had gone through them, we really didn't like the family friendly options.
Really?
They just weren't something that we saw ourselves at. We were going through, or maybe we found one that we liked and they didn't have our date. And, for us, that was a sign. If it's not meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. So we actually decided, going through the process after, discussing with you, saying, we're actually going to do adults only. And I think looking back on it, it was the best decision I made. I love my nieces and my nephews, but I think having just all of our friends there and, they got to relax too, maybe without their children, I think that's a blessing. So we had gone down to a few. I think in the end, we had it down to Secrets, Moxché, and Unico, and we decided to go with Secrets.
That first meeting, they can sometimes take a while. So was it not completely overwhelming to you?
I think when I got off the call, I looked at John, because it had been, I think we met, if I remember correctly, in like July or August, and we were planning to get married in April, so less than a year. So I remember being like, oh my goodness, should I have started planning this earlier? I was just like, there were so many options, and, we had gone through, and, I remember in the beginning we had looked at a bunch and they didn't have the date that we wanted. Right. And unfortunately we couldn't budge on the date because I only got so many days off from work. So it was like, okay, well, that's out. So what are some other resorts going through? And we didn't want something that was very like more high-rise hotel-like. We wanted a resort feel. So then that kind of narrowed some options down. But then towards the end, we got down to Secrets, Moxché, and Unico, and we decided to go with Secrets. We just felt like they had a good mix of both, and we do not regret it at all.
You didn't do any site inspections or anything like preview stays, anything like that. This was your first time, right? So you were fully relying on me.
I was relying on you, Instagram. I followed them, every post that they see, I'm looking at the weddings that they're doing. I felt like a stalker over here, just like scrolling through, watching all these posts and everything. But yeah, we had never been there. So the day we walked in was the Sunday before our wedding, and we were like, all right. And we loved it. I could not say like anything better. It was amazing.
Great. So yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm like, from my recollection of things, I think I remember you guys being foodies. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure opening up to an adults only really opened up our foodie options a bit more. There's very few family-friendly resorts that I can say has great food.
And that was one of the things that we had discussed, we wanted to that, and there weren't like that many family friendlies in our perspective that had kind of the decor and the environment that we liked and we had gone through. So that was also a big deal for us. We were looking at, some other options, and we just sat there at the end of the day. We're like, I can't see us getting married here, and I can't see us spending a week here with our family and our
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah, I wish there were more. Some of that newer resort feeling of Moxché, of Unico, some a little bit more of like a Tulum type of vibe and some of the
Yeah.
decor and whatnot. And there's another property, Hyatt Vivid Grand Island, that opened up that has it. And it's just like, but they're all adults only. So many of our couples want that vibe,
Mhm.
but need family friendly. And it's just, your resort world, hear me out, make it happen. Like,
Yeah, we got blessed. Our extended family that weren't coming were able to watch our nieces and nephews, which was nice. And I think, our friends who have children that didn't bring them, I think they looked forward to it too as a vacation. We had so many couples being like, this is the first time that my husband and I, or my wife and I, are getting to get a vacation, just the two of us. And like I said, I think everything works out for a reason. And I think for us and for them, it's a benefit both ways.
we see so many couples plan having their wedding at a family friendly resort because of, only one child that's in the group. And, and then a lot of times that child doesn't end up coming anyway. So it's, it can be frustrating for the couple. It's like, well, I chose this resort based off of that being family friendly, and, they missed out on some adult only options. So what was it specifically about Moxché? Remembering or talking about this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I was kind of honest with you on our food experience there personally, right?
Yeah, you were like pretty honest about everything, which I appreciate because, again, I'm not going to any of these
Yeah.
places. So for us, we surprisingly, one of a friend of a friend actually went there
Mhm.
like around the time that we were picking, and they were like, it was amazing. Not for a wedding, just
Yeah.
like vacationing. So we had like a little bit more intel too, besides, you and your team. So at the end of the day, obviously John was more looking at the resort aspect, and I was looking more at the wedding aspect.
Yeah.
I wanted a beach location, and I liked the fact that they have the gazebo because I didn't want to be like standing in the ocean. And I like the fact that you could either have gone in I think they call it the Sky
Mhm.
Lounge up there, which we didn't want because we wanted to be more in the greenery, which is down by the pool deck. And for me, I was like, oh, I see this of where we could set everything up, as well as looking at, again, I'm just stalking from, states away, going through and reading the reviews that we see
Yeah.
online. How do people think that the food are? What is the atmosphere like? We're all roughly late 20s, early 30s saying, well, we want a place where we can relax during the day, but has the nightlife too as well. So we had a good mix of both. And obviously, it is a stunning property.
Yeah.
Like they did a phenomenal job with that property. So you walk in and you're like, this is so beautiful. And it tells by the photos. The photos match up for what we saw in person, which just kind of topped it all
Yeah,
off.
it's interesting you mentioned like being down in the greenery and that kind of like, because for a new resort, so many newer properties, that's my downfall to them, is a lot of them are just like, I just need more trees, more plants. And I don't feel that, like, because there's so many new resorts, it feels like it's like a new housing development. They tear down every tree, they throw up a bunch of concrete, and it's just like, yeah, there's no nature. But I really didn't get that at Moxché right from the start. I mean, I think when they opened up, it had a more earthy feel, if you will. There was plants everywhere, and it was all these little subsections of like, even how they make the pools like a little bit more cenote feeling. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, they hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, the greenery worked out well because our colors were green,
Yeah.
like an offset of green. So for us, we were like, later after we had already picked the resort, we're going through and we're like, oh, well, you have to pay less for decorations and things that you want at your wedding if the location and everything is the decoration, right? We didn't have to add much for the ceremony. We added little flowers on like the gazebo, and then really for our table pieces, the whole pool deck is covered by green plants, which is stunning. And you have the water right there. You don't really need anything else, which was one, nice if you're trying to be cost effective, but two, it's so beautiful. And the greenery there just allows everything, like you're saying, to be separate. There's like a bajillion, I feel like, different pools and options. And when you go there, just as a guest, you don't feel like you're on top of each other because there's so many different segments of them, separated by beautiful greenery. So it makes it feel so spaced out, and you're kind of hanging out by yourself when realistically there's probably a lot of people there, but you don't notice it.
You can go to the main pool up front if you want, more crowded up there, but there's all these other places you can go and almost feel like you're alone.
Exactly.
So
We were hanging out in one pool, and it was like us and all of our friends like 2 days before the wedding, and it was like just us and maybe this like other little party, and that was it.
Yeah.
And we're walking around and we're like, oh, we're seeing similar people that we've seen the whole day. But other than that, it makes you feel like you're really secluded, which is nice, but you get the also the energy from the rest of the resort too as well.
on the food side of things, I don't know if I had told you or this came up when we were talking. I've been there, I don't know, I can't remember how many times I've been there at this point, but I've been there a number of times. One of those times, my wife came with me and she has celiac disease and was accidentally given something with gluten in it. It was a whole ordeal. There was many follow-up meetings with management, not only at Secrets, but at Hyatt as well afterwards. We've been back since, and the changes we've seen them make in that whole program, their menus and F&B program, to make sure that they're aware and that they're following standard procedures and protocols has been fantastic. So it was, it started off as a bad story. The changes we've seen implemented have been really great, but it's definitely a scary situation.
As a physician, you don't want anybody to have kind of those reactions when they're eating something that they really shouldn't be. And it's tough. My husband, he has like lactose intolerance, so we had to be like, please don't put anything with dairy, it will make him like really sick. And they did a phenomenal job. And two of my guests had seafood allergies, which is ironic because you're going to a resort that has a lot of seafood. So we had gone to dinner, my husband and I, at the time, a few days before. We had like a private dinner on the beach, and we had just picked, their fish of the day. But when we had gotten there, of course, like the sauce has milk in it and everything. And we'd gone through being like, hey, he can't have this. I don't care what you feed me. I'll eat anything. But he can't. And there was no issue. They had restructured his meals that were kind of set regardless. There was no dairy in it. He didn't have any issues with that we know of like cross-contamination. And then our guests who had seafood allergies, they're going out to meals and going out to dinner with their friends who are getting seafood, and they had no issue. And they were all very accommodating. And every night when we went out to dinner, we told them, hey, he can't have any dairy. And everything was just kind of okay. We didn't have any problems with that, which was nice.
I specifically remember that coming up on a consult with somebody.
Yeah.
And I was like,
because we wanted good food.
Like, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you our experience. We're not going to just sugarcoat everything and say everything's perfect. Things happen. People make mistakes.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought their customer service was top tier.
Right.
Somehow it was so funny. John, my husband, was playing volleyball, and he had scraped his knee somewhere, and he didn't care. We just scraped his knee. This was the day after the wedding, thank goodness. He had scraped his knee, and we were just sitting on the beach, and he asked the guy for a Band-Aid or something. And next thing you know, our concierge is calling him, being like, hey, Mr. Sewell, I heard you scraped your knee. He's like, how did you know that? I didn't tell anybody. It's like, I didn't tell anybody anything. And then the next day, the wedding planner had reached out to us, this is after the wedding, be like, hey, I heard you hurt your knee. Are you okay? And we were like, he's fine. It's just a little scratch. He'll be okay. And we were like, oh, okay, well, thank you. So the customer service, when we went, was phenomenal. We were amazed.
Sometimes I'm blown away. Literally right now, we have one of our agents, their friend is at a resort. I said, hey, how's everything going? And found out they had to wait for 45 minutes for breakfast one morning. They were upset about that. They didn't tell anybody about this, but got a note from the manager, got an upgrade, got all this stuff about how, oh, they're so sorry for the long wait at breakfast. I'm like, how do you know?
Exactly. How did you know?
Are you listening to the phone calls? Are you is this AI thing? I just, it's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane.
We heard about his knee for like the whole week. I was like, the guy's okay. He's fine. It's just like a little scratch. We're okay, really. But I don't know how they knew. When we were there, their customer service was
Yeah,
phenomenal.
they're all just Google bots, apparently. They just, they're listening to everything. And
Probably. The same people who were listening to get me to find you
exactly.
guys on Instagram.
So take me through the planning process a little bit before you arrived.
It was kind of stressful just for the fact that I was like, oh, maybe I should plan sooner. But they're like, hey, we'll call you 3 months before and we'll set this up. And I was like, oh, 3 months. That seems like really close, you know? But you have to think they do this every day. So for them, this is like nothing. 3 months for them is probably like too long. So 3 months before they had sent us this document, it was probably like 20 pages of just going through, you know, who are we having in the wedding? What food do we want out of their options? What flowers do we want? Where do we want to have the wedding? The time, etc. And really going through that in that structured form helped me being like, oh, okay, yeah, this goes by everything. It goes by do you want to get ready in the bridal suite? Where is he going to get ready?
Mm-hmm.
You know, for the ceremony, do you want flowers on the gazebo? Do you not? What color chairs do you want? Etc. And of course you can add to it. And then after we had filled out that document, then they had assigned us Yasmin, who was awesome. And her and I met on a Zoom and we had went through like cost breakdown of everything on like a Google spreadsheet. How did I want the tables arranged? You know, things that you just go through. And then I feel like we did this in like a month, like this whole thing. And then it was like the month before the wedding. And I was like, hey, is there anything I should do? And she's like, no. And I was like, you don't need me to like give you anything? And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, now I'm stressed because you're telling me a month before the wedding that there is nothing that I have to do. And I just hear horror stories of like my girlfriends about to rip their hair out doing the last minute planning. And I'm over here just like, okay, no problem. This is like no big deal.
So I'm intrigued though, because, knowing your position, I instantly think, I'm like, oh, she's probably type A personality and probably so was that hard for you to go into this and almost, giving up some of that control, so to speak?
In the beginning, her and I had met maybe twice a week for maybe 2 weeks of just going through, because we were going back and forth. I was having kind of, hey, maybe I don't like this as much. Can we change this? Then really after that, when we're going through, I'm like, okay, well, there's not that much. Luckily, I am so busy with work. It actually was fine because I am very type A. I'm like, okay, let's just have this, this, and this. But I had given it to her, and I was just, at that time, my schedule was so hectic because I was doing all the hectic stuff before the wedding, so I could kind of relax a little bit after. And I just couldn't even think about it. I was like, you know what? I am just giving my hands to somebody else and being like, just do this. I am putting all of my faith and trust that you guys do this every day and you know it better than I do. And we had filled it all out. And if I had to email her, I'd be like, hey, I have a question, or actually, can I switch up this? And when we had gone back and forth about table centerpieces, that was it. But other than that, I really gave, which is very rare for me to give somebody full control. But I was like, you know what? I've already given full control. I've never seen this resort. Okay, I'm giving full control to traveling somewhere new, relatively, of going there. And I'm like, well, what's one thing else to give all control to the wedding planner who's going to set this up? And it turned out beautifully. So the week was just so seamless.
It goes to show, it's there's so many resorts, and we don't recommend them all. we recommend select ones. There's reasons for that, and part of that is the trust and capabilities we have in the weddings team to make things happen, which ultimately goes to your ease of mind and planning as well. Secrets Moxché, the weddings team there is fantastic, or one of the best in the business. When we send clients there, we don't have to worry about any of these things.
And we had talked about that with a few other resorts, and you were like, because I remember me saying, I'm very type A. I need somebody who's going to be on top of it because I know that I don't have the time to do this. So I need somebody who's going to be able to take what I want and turn it into my vision. And there were a few resorts you were like, hey, I really don't think that this is going to work out just from a wedding perspective, because their wedding team is not as on top of it, which would mean you would have to hire a third party, which for us, we're doing destination too because it's cost effective, right? Having to go out to get another third party was not something that we wanted either. So having you guys say, hey, this team knows what they're doing. They're going to take your vision and make it into action. And that sounds good is exactly what they did, which made me feel more comfortable. So I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Yeah. People don't realize that is also one of the variables that you should be considering when you're choosing to do a destination wedding or choosing a resort. It's not just about how much your guests pay. It's not just about how much you pay. Your sanity involved in the planning process is also important. And it's just like, it's little things. I mean, it's how quickly, and this is the vein of my existence and what we do for a living is, we respond to our clients immediately. Weddings teams at any resorts, they're on island time. They don't take us. And I'm like, if we could just work with resorts that their weddings team responds as quickly as we do to our clients, we could work so much business with that resort.
The response time was pretty fair. I went to medical school out of the country on an island, so I know what island time is. John, he did not really do much of the response to emails because he knew I was going to be all on it. It wasn't too bad in terms of that, like maybe 2 days, which again, I was so busy that it just kind of didn't even notice any difference. And really, if I didn't get a response and I was like about maybe something I was stressing about, I just sent another follow-up email like, hey, haven't heard from you. Can you answer this? And then, but she was very good. Our wedding coordinator was phenomenal in terms of answering. Or if I said, you know what, I don't really want to do this via email, can we set up a Zoom to go back through everything again? And even if it was 10 minutes, it's just easier. And like, it's tough because there also is a language barrier. They were phenomenal with English, and unfortunately I don't know that much Spanish, but it also makes it easier because things aren't getting lost in translation via an email or something else. So we would just set up 10 minutes. Hey, I updated this on this spreadsheet, or I added, how I want the table set up. How does this look on your end? It looks good. Great. Okay. I'll see you, in maybe a week or two.
So take me through actual wedding day and the events. Well, actually the whole trip. I mean, did you guys do a welcome party?
We didn't.
You did not. Okay. So no welcome
We
party.
did not do a welcome
So what
party.
did you guys do that first night? Did you meet up with your guests? Unofficial?
We had gone for 7 nights because we knew that we weren't really going to be able to have a designated honeymoon just for time off of work. So we had gone there Sunday, and I think just my in-laws had come on Sunday too. And, a few people trickled in, but I would say most people came Tuesday or Wednesday. Okay. Our wedding was Thursday. So most people came Tuesday or Wednesday. So during the week, we would see them out. We had kind of made a conscious effort that earlier, that kind of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we wanted to just be the two of us since we weren't having, a designated honeymoon, and our guests totally respected that. And then once Tuesday afternoon hit, it was party central. We had taken over a whole pool. And I just didn't see the point of having a welcome party when you're already at an all-inclusive resort and you can grab food wherever you want and you can have drinks. And we just texted our friends being like, hey, we're going to be at this pool. If you want to come by, feel free. If you don't want to, because this is a vacation for you, do whatever you please. And I would say most people came by the pool. We were having drinks, hanging out. They had music. So we stayed at the pool until the pool's closed and we had to go get to dinner. And then our friends did dinner. We always made a conscious effort of just doing dinner, the two of us, for the week, except for the rehearsal dinner. So then the night before, we did the same thing on Wednesday. We're by the beach all day. We had taken over all these cabanas of our whole basically wedding party, playing volleyball. The guys are bringing us drinks. And then for the rehearsal dinner, we had just our immediate family at one of the restaurants, which they accommodated to. We got right in. It was a beautiful setup. And then we went out to their sports bar the night before, and they had karaoke. They have the golf simulator, and we were out till probably a little later than I should have been the night before the wedding. But that's okay. And all of our friends, they met out at the sports bar, and we were all just hanging out. And it was so fun because we never going to get this again in our entire lives. We know that. And then the day of the wedding came, and I told him, I'm like, well, you don't have to be ready until 2 o'clock. Okay. I have to be ready a little bit earlier, got to get hair and makeup done. And he was on the beach all day with our friends. I didn't really feel like showering 3 times because it's hot. Right. It's Mexico. So all of our friends and him are at the beach. They're sending me little clips of them. And me and my maid of honor are having our little girls' time in the bridal suite, jamming out to music. like dancing. They're laughing at us while they're trying to do our hair and makeup, and we're just like jamming out. And then we had gotten ready there right before the pictures had started. So it was nice, and then everything kind of flowed right into the ceremony and reception.
Sounds like it was a lot of Snapchat opportunities before.
Yeah, our friends have like this whole, we made like the combined Apple thing where everybody can add their photos, and it is just like, it continues to add. People keep adding photos to it, which is great for us because we didn't have our phones the day of the wedding. You know, I knew that I would lose mine, and I didn't want him in his pockets for the photos. So we didn't have any phones, so we really trusted on our friends to, take some of those memories. We did ask our guests not to have photos during the ceremony. That was just not something which everybody was respectful on, because I didn't want those in the background of my shots. And then after that, like once the party hit, our friends have great clips from the reception all the way into the speakeasy, which, yeah, there's a lot of clips from that. We got video of the ceremony because that was included, but we didn't get video of the reception. And I think the next morning, it had been not even 12 hours after the wedding, and one of our friends had sent us a video that she made of all these clips of the wedding, and we were going through it like, this is the best thing that we've seen, and we didn't pay anybody for it. She was like, I love to do this. Now this is a video clip that we show our friends and family, like, look how much fun this was. And she did a great job on it, so we are very grateful to her, because I probably watch it at least once a day.
I'm like, yes, if you hire a videographer, I'm not discounting them at all. Things can be edited in a much more cinematic way. They can be choreographed better as far as the video shots playing out and whatnot. Having that experience with your friends and family is once in a lifetime. It's never going to happen again. All those people down there in that location, and it is an awesome memory to have. When you break out those cameras and get them. As a photographer, you always had those people that, like, as soon as you pointed the camera at them, they were like, "Oh God, stop!" Like,
our friends ate up the camera.
Maybe you won't want to remember this, but everybody else will. The bride and groom absolutely will. Like, this is, you're part of this. Enjoy it and just live it up and let yourself go a little bit. How'd you choose your ceremony location and your reception location? You were obviously on the beach for your ceremony, at the pool deck for the reception. Did you have a cocktail hour in between, or was that anywhere?
The cocktail hour was also at the pool deck on the other side. So their pool deck is like kind of a U. So they had the cocktail hour on the one side and then the reception on the other side. And then right from the ceremony, they had walked everybody. They did, like, the day before, they talk about the weather. They're like, oh no, it's going to rain. And I was like, I don't care. If it rains, then I'm getting wet, because I have dreamed about getting married on the beach. And there was not a cloud in the sky.
Did you look at any of the other locations at Moxché, both for the ceremony and the reception? And obviously we know why you chose the locations you did. Was there any reasons that any locations that were like, oh, I couldn't stand this one because of this, or I really were a second choice maybe as well?
I think one of the bigger ones that they do is their sky deck. I can't remember what it's called, sky deck or something. And they can do the reception like inside and then the ceremony outside. There is an added cost to that. And that was something that we took in and said, you know what, we want to be able to, lower our costs. And to be honest, you're going to see the water either way if you're on the sky, deck, or if you're by the beach. And so for me, it didn't matter. So if somebody's really thinking about locations, there is an added cost to having your wedding up there, which for some people, maybe that doesn't matter as much. And then there were just some other layout things, I had seen a lot of people had done it up there, just on their Instagram, that the reception was inside, but then the dance floor was outside. And for me, that kind of seemed like it kind of cut the two very separate. Yeah. And I'm sure you could do the dance floor inside depending on how many guests you had. But I just wanted everything to kind of flow a little bit better, because, some people may not be dancing the whole night, but maybe they want to watch, or they don't want to be, just awkwardly standing there around the dance floor. So it was something that we considered. But at the end of the day, we really liked getting our feet in the sand. Well, my feet, he wore shoes. And then having the pool deck, really also too because of the greenery, because it really just tied everything in and allowed us that we didn't need extra decor.
I couldn't imagine having to separate you would just completely separate all the energy. It's hard to get energy going,
Exactly.
from a DJ standpoint or whatnot. It's hard to get the energy of the group going if you have that separate rooms. I always hated when they're like, okay, we're going to cut the cake now. And it's like, hey, we just got the energy up. Shut it all down. We got to go cut the cake for a photo of the bride and groom going like this. And I'm like, and then we go right back to it and try to pick up the energy. And it's just like, once you break it, it's very difficult.
It's tough to get back. Yeah. So we wanted all of the energy to be right there, like you're saying. The dance floor be right in between where the guests are sitting and just kind of be right there and in one location, and not having to go kind of back and forth. And we had talked about having the cocktail hour on the beach, but we thought, most of our photos were going to be on the beach, and we wanted people to kind of be away from us while we were taking that time, being husband and wife, of having the photos there, not having our guests stare at us. So that's why we decided to move the cocktail hour to the pool deck, and then it was right there, and then they only had to walk 5 feet from the cocktail hour to the reception. 100%. I have said so many good things about this week, and if I could share it to have other people even want to experience this, I don't know why more people don't do this. We have been trying to tell all of our friends who are either like gonna get married, or maybe we think maybe eventually they get married, like, do a destination, look at how fun this was, do you want to come back and being able to do this? And all of our guests raved about the week. I didn't hear our guests say a single bad thing, and they're very honest people, so they would tell me if they thought that something was bad, and everybody just loved their experience. And I just thought from beginning to end there was not a bad thing that I could have said about anything that had happened.
And they created far more memories at a destination wedding across multiple days than they would at a local wedding that's one night out. And
we had at least minimum 4 days with most of our guests, maximum for our guests who stayed for the whole week, 7 days. So it's like you could do those couple of hours, and if you have a bigger wedding, maybe you're not even seeing some of those guests. We were hanging out. We only had 25 people. So we were everybody was hanging out. Even people who didn't know each other before this. Like maybe some of my friends or some of his friends that had never met before. And everybody's coming together, and it just blended so perfectly. I really don't know why more people don't get married in a destination wedding.
Certainly anywhere in the Northeast, compared to having a local wedding, I mean, most of our couples save quite a bit as well compared to what they would spend locally. At the venues locally.
Yeah. I've heard horror stories of some people paying like over $100,000 in the Northeast for a wedding. And for me, that is just like crazy. Yeah. If I'm going to spend that much, I would rather go travel somewhere with all of my friends and do that rather than just doing that for a couple hours. And you know what? Everybody has their vision for their wedding day, so I won't knock somebody for doing that. But for us, it was just not feasible and not something that we wanted to do, spend that kind of money for just a couple hours when we were able to spend less money and have almost a whole week with all of our guests.
100%. How do you feel in our role? What we did at BAI with your guest experience with us, with your experience with us, how are we helpful to you and your guests throughout?
You guys were amazing from the beginning, right? I remember you and I going back and forth on audio chats, being like about these resorts, going back and forth as we're figuring it out. And then, you guys make a website, which was one less thing that I had to do, right? And taking the stress off of having to figure out my guest travel was like immense. I couldn't have asked for anything else, because then they're not asking me all the time like, hey, what do I do, or how do I do this? Everything is on this website, and it gives very set instructions. This is the travel options that you have, which room do you want and which transfer do you want, and everything was already taken care of, which means that I had less to worry about, which at the end of the day I'm grateful for, so thank you. But there really wasn't much questions coming my way, which was nice. And then if I did have something, I'm shooting over an email and you guys are answering in like what I feel like is 5 seconds. And you guys are so quick to respond. And then even getting closer to, right, you guys had sent us those nice gifts, which we were like, oh, this is like so thought of. And even going through, I had been like, this is so great, we're here. And you're like, oh my God, have like the best time ever. And I was on like, I probably cried every day in Mexico, just tears of joy. And you guys had just set it up perfectly for us to get there, which had made it helpful for me and, my family and our guests.
Yeah. Looking back at the wedding, were there any personal touches to the decor or schedule that was really made it your wedding?
I think initially what we had talked about in terms of a little touches, we didn't want all the extra we're two very kind of simple people, I like to think. So, things that we like to do is our Polaroid camera. So that Polaroid camera went
Yeah.
everywhere with us that entire week and was our guest book for the wedding. And our friends saw it and were like, this is not surprising because Gab always carries her Polaroid camera whenever we go out places. Like it's there and I have like multiple books. They did want us to have a little bit different flow of the timeline. And that was something that I was like, no, I think if I remember correctly, they wanted like everybody to eat and then do the dances, and then like it was kind of broken up weird, and I was like, well, I would rather just be introduced and then go right into our dances, because like what you were talking about before, once you get the energy started, I did not want to break the energy of our guests, like really getting
Right.
pumped up and then be like, oh hey, we're gonna stop to play this like sad song and watch me cry with my dad, so, and I think they were kind of looking at it because we had like the cold
Mm.
fireworks and it wasn't going to be as dark, and I personally didn't care. Fireworks are still fireworks. It doesn't matter if it's dark or not out. You're still going to see them in photos and in the video. So we had adjusted that to have the timeline like right when we got introduced, just go into our dances, and we didn't add all the extra stuff. We just had us introduced. Our friends know how much that we love each other and how much we view this day of just really being about how much we care for each other and our future. So it was spent a lot less on kind of everybody else and really focusing on us. We didn't want people to be introduced except for us, and had everything really just centered around the love.
What was the most memorable part of the actual wedding day? And then what was the most memorable part of the trip overall?
I think the most memorable part of the wedding day was at the end. We wanted to do like a semi-private last dance, but it was not private at all because all of our guests were still there. But it was so cute because everybody had like taken out their phone and put the lights on, and they were actually singing the song to us. And we were dancing, and everybody's just standing around us, like singing to us. And I was like, "This is like the coolest thing ever." Of course, the whole day was amazing, but if I think about things, I'm like, "That's what I remember." Not as much as our first dance, which I loved, but having everybody just surround us and showing us their love was something that I won't forget. And I think of the whole week. Oh man, there was a little times that things got a little wild. We had gone up to the bar the next day and we were all drinking like pina coladas. And the guy was like, oh, tequila. And I was like, yeah, if you want to put tequila in pina coladas, like, I don't care. No, next thing you know, they were lining up rows of shots for us and all of our guests. And we're like, it's 10:30 in the morning, but I guess this is how this is going to start. And it just like the energy of the whole day post wedding, we were like, oh, nobody was tired. We were all ready just to go wild. That was a good experience.
After the wedding, you guys hit up the nightclub there.
Yeah. The Gypsy Club. So the pharmacy, which is full functioning, has like one of their doors that opens at like 10:30, and so it was perfect because our reception had ended at 10. And then we were able, our parents didn't really want to go out and be partying with all of us till 2 in the morning. So we said our goodbyes. I didn't want to change because I was like, paid a lot of money for this dress, and this thing is staying on until I go to bed tonight. John had actually changed, and I was like, I'm not going up to the room. I'm going to stay down here. So I got a drink with my girlfriends, and then he had come back down changed in his Hawaiian shirt that he was like so excited to wear after the after party. And then we had rolled in, and they have like a special catchphrase every day. And I think that day it was like Alka-Seltzer or something. And, so you go in and it's just like bumping music, and it's everybody from the resort, and they all see that we're like, I'm in my wedding dress. They can tell our guests are wearing more wedding attire, and the people at the resort were going wild. They were dancing with us. That's where that clip was from. Everybody was like surrounding us, and they had played Bury You by Bruno Mars, and everyone's like, do the lift. And I was like, all right, we got to do the lift. Everybody at this resort wants a lift right now. We have to do it. And that's where that clip had come up from. So we had gone there after, and we didn't leave till like 2 a.m. And I was blinking, like falling asleep. But I was just so energized from the day. And I remember looking at John and being like, I think it's time to go, because every time I blink, I think I'm falling asleep a little bit more. But we couldn't leave because our guests were all having so much fun. But, finally, I think by 2 we were like, all right, we got to call it. I wasn't even drinking, like, because we were like dancing all over the place. I would have knocked a drink out of my hand in a heartbeat. And we were just like energized on just the high on life,
Well,
basically.
that nightclub, I mean, that brings a lot of energy. It's some resorts you go into, and it's like, oh, they've got this room over here. There'll be a DJ, and it's like, but it's like, no, you go in there, it's the lighting in there. It's like,
Yeah.
it looks like a nightclub, and it's just like that
Yeah.
helps bring all that energy.
And then their staff had come in, and I think my bouquet was already lost. I have no idea where it ended up, but my maid of honor still had her bouquet. And then they were like playing music, and they're like, let's toss it. And then now everybody in the resort is like going into this one spot as I'm tossing this bouquet. And I'm like, I didn't even do a bouquet toss at the actual reception. And I'm like, but we're doing it now. And everybody was just so into it. Even people that weren't into our wedding were coming up to us being like, this looks like you guys are having the most fun ever. And I was like, I've been to so many weddings and nobody has to drive home after. Everybody is just partying, enjoying it up, and everybody was just having a genuinely good time.
You are making me miss my days as a wedding photographer so much right now.
I would do anything to go back to this week again. If I could relive it all over, I wouldn't even change anything. Just reliving it just again, I would in a heartbeat. I cried leaving. I was so sad that we had to leave with our friends and that we didn't get this experience. And before we left, I was like, okay, are we going to book our trip back for our anniversary? Because I'm ready to buy our flights right now.
Yeah, well, and Secrets, they give you that anniversary voucher, right? So, you know.
They do, yeah. They sent us a voucher like a few days later for depending on how many nights we booked. I'm so ready to do the return trip. And even our friends are like, can we come? I'm like, if you want to come to celebrate our anniversary, feel free. Because they had so much fun at the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, we can help out with that part too. So just to let us know, 99% of what we do is destination weddings, but like we do individual travel as well.
Yeah, the transportation, by the way, 10 out of 10.
Good. You got a limo,
Really
right?
10.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. Which I had never been in a limo in my entire life. So when we had gotten out, the Lomas gentlemen were waiting there with the sign of our picture. So there were waterworks already, right? Because I was like, oh my God, this is the cutest thing. The guy's like, why are you crying? And John's looking at me like, why are you crying? We just got here. And I was like, I'm so excited. So then they had walked through and there were like people waiting. And he's like, oh, this for you. I was like, no, I think we just got like a regular car. He's like, no, this is for you. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem. So we're getting, surprise. And we get in there, and I look at John, and I'm like, I've never been in a limo in my life. We're like laying across the seats, like just seeing how many different ways that we could like fit in these chairs because it's so big. And they had like a sombrero. We have clips of just us like living up the fact that we've never been in a limo. And then we got there, and they were so sweet. They had everything, and then the return was just as beautiful, right? We're coming back. They're like, oh no, we're gonna walk you in and get your bags checked. I'm like, what, Riff? You don't have to do that. It's okay. He's like, no, we got it. And I was like, all right, this is nice. And we had talked about it because we've been to Mexico before. And the last time our transfer was not as good. And we were joking, like, if we ever go back, we're not doing transfers with anybody else because the bar has just been set so high. And our guests were like, it was so simple. They were right there. You know, they're not waiting on anybody. It was just who was ever on their flight going out, and they had everything set up to go. It was so seamless.
Yeah, we can't upgrade everybody to a limo just for anybody else watching this, but we do try to do our best at upgrading where possible. Yeah. You know, if we can get a limo, great, but they're not always available. There's not a ton of them. If you could give any other piece of good advice to, a couple that's just starting the destination wedding planning process, what would it be?
It would be utilize your resources, right? You know, I am so blessed that we had you guys at Be All Inclusive to be able to help us because it's a whole different world. You know, you're going to a whole nother country, whether it's Mexico or anywhere else. So utilize the resources that are set there to help you because it's only going to make the process so much smoother, you know, and then you can really just focus on the wedding day of your dreams. So everybody is there to help you, but you have to know who to go to and make sure you're getting good advice.
Looking back, would you do anything differently?
No.
Good.
I wouldn't do a single thing differently. Everything, even if I tried to think about it, I couldn't because I wouldn't change anything for the world.
Perfect. And if somebody was on the fence about whether or not they should do a destination wedding or do a local wedding, or if they're on the fence about booking with BAI, specifically, what would you tell them?
If you're on the fence between a local wedding or a destination wedding, you should really think about the things that are important to you. If you really want to focus on your wedding be you and your partner's love and having that kind of close knit, but also being able to travel with the people that you care the most about, then you should definitely be doing destination. And if you're also really worried about the cost, you should also probably do a destination because it is significantly cheaper and you can have a beautiful, stunning day for a fraction of the price of what you could get in the United States. And if you're thinking about, be all inclusive versus somebody else, then really sit down and talk with, James or somebody from their team because they know what they're talking about and you guys are transparent. There were other things that other services that we had looked at, and on your website, you guys break it down the cost of what your couples are paying for their wedding or how much the comps that they're getting back. And everybody else is just like, oh yeah, call us and we'll talk to you about it. And when I get that, it's like, you're trying to hide something. Like you're trying to get me to lure in first rather than just being open and honest. So if you want, somebody who's going to be honest with you about your where you're going to be, how things work for a destination wedding, then transparency is exactly what is important. And then everybody at BAI is going to help you. That's how you guys hooked John. He actually saw your website. It was between you and somebody else. And he had saw the website and was like, I actually like them because they have like Excel spreadsheets, I feel like, of what the costs are breakdown for a wedding. And he's a very logistical kind of guy. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get married somewhere beautiful. I know it's going to be cheaper regardless. But having that open and honest kind of communication was like, oh, these are people that you can trust. Because if you're being honest, even before I've ever talked to you about how this kind of lays out, then I can expect that once we kind of grow that relationship, then of course it's only going to be honesty and transparency going from there.
Favorite drink at the resort?
Pina coladas.
Favorite song from the dance floor?
Take Forever was our first dance song, so by Cooper Allen. So that was probably my
favorite wedding guest moment?
Probably when we were all twerking equally at the Gypsy Club, and the other guests at the resort were probably staring at us, and they were, but we were all like, all the girls were twerking, so that was probably a top moment.
Awesome. All right, Gabriella, well, you have made me thoroughly regret the fact that I did not attend your wedding. Anything else that you think people should know that we didn't touch on?
No, I think if you're considering a destination, you should just do it. Because if your heart has already even planted the seed that you may want a destination wedding, just go for it like full force. Because I promise you, you are not going to regret it.
Sunny down in Mexico.